Webinar Series 2022. We're delighted that you're here to join us today, and we appreciate your time. We are going to go ahead and jump right in, and we're going to review a few things before we dive into all of the content. So just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a full series. It's a full 6 sessions that are going to be taking place from now through to July 12th. It's going to be every Tuesday with the exception of June 23rd, which will be a Thursday. So we're going to go through everything today, being the overview of our groups and diving in a little bit deeper on the policies. And we are going to next week jump into requesting groups. The week after that, managing groups. The following week, we'll be making more money through groups, which is all about our ancillary items and how you add those onto your group bookings. July 5th, we are going to review onboard functions and requesting, how you go about doing that with us. And then last but not least, on July 12th, how to find more groups, how to get more group business. So we hope you join us each and every week. If you cannot attend live, no problem. We understand time is short these days, and we want you to be able to get all the information. So we just request that you register and you'll get the recording. Don't worry. And of course, most importantly, on every single week, we're giving away a free cruise to one lucky winner. So we hope you join us for each and every session. So with that, let's move forward. We've got the group's overview and policies today that we are going to go through. So by the end of this session, you will be able to understand the benefits of booking groups with MSC Cruises. Also, understanding a little bit about the different policies that we offer. And you'll also be able to take full advantage and know where to find the important resources that we have available to help you grow your group business. And then certainly, most importantly, we want to show you how you can increase your sales through booking groups with MSC Cruises. So let's get to it. So why groups over individual bookings? Well, you know, groups tend to book further out. First of all, I just want to say that. And this gives you the opportunity to secure business further into the future, so you can build that base of your business. And many groups, as we know, are people traveling together. Sometimes it might be promotional groups that you're doing, but most of the time these are people traveling together. So this is a great opportunity to build that repeat business with each group that you book. Also, there are ways to expand your client base. This allows you to, you get spin-off business from groups. I think it's very interesting. In the past, when I was a travel advisor, I found that I had a lot of people would come back to us if they were part of a group, that they came back to us to do another trip that wasn't necessarily associated with that group. So it's a really great opportunity for you to widen your client base. Now, obviously, you can lock in pricing earlier. So as we build the base through group business, the idea here, of course, is that we can then increase FIT rates, but your group business is locked in at that price point. So it allows you to hold that space at that price for a much longer time frame. Now, of course, we offer our amenities as well with our group amenity program, and we're going to dive into that in a lot more detail further into the presentation. Also, opportunity to increase your commissions. You could use that with your points as well, but there's other opportunities, of course, we offer from time to time, promotions that allow you to earn more commission. Of course, the tour conductor credits, and as I mentioned previously, that forward business and the expanded client base. So now, why MSC for your groups? Well, if you're not aware, we are the world leading global cruise line. We have 21 ships now in our fleet, and we have 4 more on the way. Those are going to be our world-class vessels. But, we continue to be the fastest growing cruise line in the world. And recently, we have moved into the position of the 3rd largest cruise line in the world. A lot of people just aren't aware of that. We sail to over 150 worldwide destinations. And of course, we offer amazing experience both on board and ashore for the guests that sail with us. Now, aside from our brand, why else should you be doing groups with MSC Cruises? Well, we do have a dedicated shoreside groups department, and we are growing our groups department so that we can handle more business. We also offer a competitive tour conductor program as well as our group amenity program. You, of course, can expand and earn more money by doing prepaid group services with us. We're going to talk a lot about those ancillary items. And of course, being able to prepay service charges and make a very inclusive packaged opportunity for your group travelers. And then, of course, complimentary use of our onboard venues and the services of our dedicated onboard group events coordinators. They're there to help you with everything on board and really make it a seamless experience. Now, what I want to do today is dive in a little bit deeper on our policies. During the pandemic, we reworked our groups program. We took time and we listened to what our valued travel advisors shared with us on how we could improve on our policies. So when we went through the process of reevaluating our policies, and we took a hard look at that and we made some wonderful enhancements. So today we're going to talk specifically about the 3 different policies that we work with at MSC. We have our standard policy, which actually breaks into 2 different categories, our no deposit policy and our minimum deposit policy. And we'll go into more detail on these. We also have our large policy, our large group policy, which is 70 staterooms or more. And then, of course, we have our MICE policy, meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. So let's go into each of these one by one. Now, our standard policy, these are ones that you can actually make your request through the MSC Groups quotator, which, by the way, we're doing a training on how to make your group requests, so no worries. We'll cover that in great detail, that actual process on a future webinar. But for now, the standard policy, these are the ones that you can make through Group Quotator and get that immediate contract and that immediate group number and start promoting right away. This, as I mentioned before, breaks into 2 different policies. We have our no deposit policy, which allows for groups of 16 staterooms or less, and you have no deposit required to hold that space. So it's a waiver of our good faith deposit, and you get up to 6 months to promote that group before a full deposit and names are due on that particular group. Now, the only exception to that is if this is booked inside of that 180 days. For example, if you're booking close to or right at final payment, some of those timeframes have to be modified because of that. So let's, in a perfect world, say that you're booking this a year in advance. You ultimately have 180 days to promote that before any deposits will be due. Now, the other types of groups within our standard policy are our minimum deposit policy. This is reserved for groups that are 17 to 70 staterooms in size. We do require a $50 per stateroom deposit that is due to us within 30 days of actually blocking the space. You do get an additional 5 months to promote the group before full deposits and names are due. So similar to the no deposit policy, you're receiving up to 6 months to promote that group and sell into it without any significant money being due. Once at 180 days, then we will review allocation with you. And depending on your situation, we may reduce to sold depending upon that sailing, or we may allow you to continue to hold space. There are specific allocation review timelines in our policies. And again, encourage you to take a look at those. We're going to jump into a few other things about our group policies specifically, but this is just a very high level overview of our standard group policy. Moving forward, let's talk a little bit about the large group policy. I'm realizing I have a typo there. Sorry about that, folks. So the large policy applies to groups of 70 staterooms or more. Now, it's important to mention that large groups cannot be reserved currently through our groups quotator. This is a group that you would have to contact your MSC sales representative to put in the request. Now, they, of course, will get all of the information from you. We turn that over to our groups team and our revenue team to work together to come back with the group proposal and contract for you. Now, it's important to mention that similar to standard groups, you will have a deposit schedule and terms that is very almost identical in every way to our standard group policy. It does, however, have a stricter allocation review schedule that we look at with our large groups. And then, of course, as it relates to cancellation schedule and terms and conditions, it is very similar, if not identical, to our standard groups policy. So as I mentioned before, you cannot do these through Quotator. It's because of the size of the group, and we ultimately have to look at the voyage and the size of the group to determine exactly what the pricing and the breakdown of your allocations, okay? Now, briefly, I'm going to take a step backwards, and I apologize. On the standard policy, I do want to point out that when you are booking through Quotator, and again, when we do the webinar on the Quotator process, we'll point this out to you, but you will receive an immediate contract and group number provided that you're staying within the allocated inventory matrix that we stipulate. So when we go through that process, we'll point that out to you. But if you were to go outside of that standard allocation guideline, then it has to go through a non-standard approval process. So I just want to be clear that if you stay within those guidelines, you will receive that contract immediately and no further approvals would be necessary. So we will review that. It's an inventory matrix, if you will, but we will review that when we do the Quotator webinar training in the next week. So moving forward, our third policy is our MICE policy. Now, MICE, again, as I mentioned, is meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. Now, I'm happy to say that we have a dedicated team, sales team, for our MICE business. So you would first, of course, reach out to your MSC Cruises sales representative, and we would gather all of the information from you, and we would submit that request, and you would work with our dedicated MICE team for that piece of business. Now, keep in mind that MICE groups are under stricter deposit and payment schedule and terms, as well as cancellation and attrition schedule and terms. I encourage you to download these documents. I have them as handouts on our webinar today, but they are also always available to you on MSC Book under our groups program page. So when you go to MSC Book and you log in, you would go to booking for the drop down, look for groups program, and then ultimately on that page at the bottom, you will see we have 4 documents for you to download, which are the same 4 documents I have in our download area today for the webinar. So looking at some things a little bit closer, because these are things that are very important to you all the time, I think, with any type of business, let alone with groups. But let's look specifically at how commissions and tour conductor credits are paid out for our group business. So commissions are paid at the standard commission structure that you qualify for your agency with MSC Cruises. Now, we do also, so you're aware, we pay a 5% commission on ancillary items that are added on to groups. Again, as I mentioned, we're having a webinar on June 28th, and we're going to go through how you do that. So how you can make more money selling with your groups with MSC Cruises. But I want to mention also that we give you an additional, we give 10% commission for group excursions. So we're going to talk about all of that in great detail on June 28th during that webinar. Now, specifically about tour conductors, we have a very competitive tour conductor program. And this actually allows for you to earn tour conductor credits. And it's a standard, of course, of 1 TC credit for every 8 staterooms. So every 15 guests, the 16th earns that TC credit. Now, from time to time, we have promotions that allow for accelerated TC policies. And of course, with our groups program, we have the amenities that we offer, the Amenity Points program. And we're going to talk in more detail about how you can use those points to also adjust your TC policy. But for a moment, let's talk how they're paid out and how we determine that value. So all of the TC credits are earned, as I mentioned, a standard of 1 for every 15. You can, we calculate those based on the average gross cruise fare paid. These are paid out to you at a net value, and we must have a specific booking determined within your group that we must apply that tour conductor credit to. Now, it's important to mention that this is not being applied to this booking as a payment, but this is merely being attached to a booking within the group so that we can pay it out to you along with your standard commission once the group is finalized and sails. We do not pay tour conductors out in advance because if there are cancellations on that booking prior to sailing, it will impact the value of that tour conductor credit. So tour conductor credits are paid after sailing with the standard group commission that is applicable. So hopefully that's clear and everyone understands that. Now, another area that is very important that I think we talk in a little more detail about is the ability to transfer an individual booking to our groups. Now, a few years ago, we did develop the ability to transfer individual bookings to groups. It's important to point out that there are certain parameters that must be met in order for this to be able to be done. Now, when you make a booking in FIT, as long as that booking is on the same ship and sail date as your booking, your group booking, the system is going to vet the entire process to make sure that it meets all of the requirements. So basically that every box is checked as far as what we allow that to be pulled in. And when you're in MSC Book and you're in that individual booking, the button, if you will, which will appear on the left-hand side of the screen in the system, will say transfer to group. If it is grayed out or it doesn't appear, it means that that booking does not meet the parameters in every aspect of what we require, okay? So if it's there, you simply click the button and the transfer process begins, and we do everything on the backside for you. But it's important to point out that there are certain limitations, and these can only be done when all of those are actually met. So this is also outlined in each of the policies that I have attached as a handout, as well as in the policies that are on MSC Book for you to download for future reference. Okay, so very important to make sure the ability is there and we allow it. You just have to make sure that all of the requirements are met. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about our Amenity Points program. Again, as I mentioned during the pandemic, we did take a hard look at our policy as it relates to the group menu, and we made some changes. So in this case, this is just a snapshot of the amenity menu. Again, it's in the handouts and on MSC Book. We have offerings for guest-facing amenities as well as agency-facing amenities. Now, as you know, we assign points to our sailings basically to attract business, right? So anywhere up to 8 points in value are assigned by our revenue department on each of the sailings when they open for sale. Now, you have the ability to choose what best suits your needs for your group and your clients. We allow you to mix and match these any way you like. We also protect the guest-facing amenities down to a single cabin, provided you have proof that you've promoted that group. So as an example, let's say that you were to block 16 staterooms, no deposit, right? And there was 4 points on that group, and you decided that you were going to take those 4 points as a $50 shipboard credit for your guest, and you're advertising that, and for whatever reason you only managed to sell 1 or 2 rooms. When that group gets reduced to sold and those 2 staterooms remain in the group booking, we're not going to take those points away, and we're not going to take that amenity away. If you can provide to us that you advertise it and you showed us that you advertised it, we're going to protect that, and we're going to keep that amenity on the booking for you. We'd never want to put you in a bad position with your customer. Agent facing, so in in reverse, if you decided to take that as, let's say, marketing dollars, but you only sold 2 staterooms, that amenity would not be protected. Okay, so keep in mind that guest facing would be protected if you fall below the 8 cabin requirement or the 8 stateroom requirement. Now, from time to time, we offer promotions that will allow you to take advantage of increased amenity points. So make sure that you reach out to your MSC sales representative. Make sure that you're on our mailing list so that we keep you up to date on all of the promotions and announcements as they come, because there's always great opportunities out there to score additional amenities when it comes to groups with us. So taking a little bit of a closer look at the groups program, we focused on what was missing. So we've outlined a few things here. So as we mentioned before, GAP were assigned at each sailing when we launched them for sale in order for us to attract the business. GAP can be utilized for either a guest or the agency or both. It's important to point out that you should choose at the time your group is booked or you go to contract what those amenity points are going to be used for. Okay, so that should be chosen and that amenity should be assigned to your group contract at that time. Now, if your group is reduced to sold or below 8, you want to make sure that those points have been assigned prior to that happening. So whichever comes first, you need to make sure that those amenities are assigned. So that's why I'm suggesting that you always do it at the time it goes to contract, because then there's no concern. Now, you can change your election of your points and your amenities. That can only be done one time, and it must be done prior to final payment, because once we go into finalization, those changes cannot be made. So it's very important that you look at what you've sold, how many rooms, how you're using your points to make sure that you're using them to the best of your ability. I'm going to go in and give you an example here in just a minute, go into detail on that, to give you an idea of how you might want to change up your points prior to finalization based on what you've sold, because it might get you more bang for your buck. So again, guest-facing amenities are protected. And I always recommend, if you're working for an agency that has a larger network of agents, make sure you're checking with your colleagues, because they might have bookings on that same sailing. So it really is a great idea to look to create a group and have all of those bookings together, because ultimately you can earn those amenities if it were in a group. So just a suggestion. So now let's take a look at an example. On the left, under example 1, is a typical thought process, right? That knee-jerk reaction to say, okay, well, I've got a group of 10 staterooms that are going to go. Let's say you block 16 staterooms, and you originally selected that you were going to give them a shipboard credit because that particular sailing had 6 points, right? So now, of course, when you get down to it and you see that you've got 10 cabins out of those 16, it's been reduced to sold, and you haven't elected to change anything, the value of that amenity ends up being $75 per stateroom at 10 staterooms, ultimately is a $750 value. Pretty easy math. But if we take a closer look on that same group being 10 cabins sold with 6 points, we could look in this particular example, we could look to reduce the TC policy instead of taking the standard TC, reducing it down, allowing you potentially to earn that second credit, right? And then utilizing that in lieu of the shipboard credit, purchasing the shipboard credit. Now, all of this, of course, this math is dependent upon what your inventory sold in the group was, right? So if you sold all inside, certainly that's not going to necessarily be the case. But let's say that you sold a lot of balconies and maybe a suite or two, and they're worth a little bit more. In the end, it could yield you a little more money in your pocket, is where I'm going with this. So it's very important to reassess your inventory sold against your points election prior to final, and maybe make that one-time change to your points so that you can end up with a little bit more money in your pocket. Okay, So again, just suggestions on how you can improve what you're doing. Now we're going to move into the resources that are available to help you with selling groups with us. First and foremost, of course, is MSC Book. We have a toolkit. As I mentioned before, when you log into MSC Book, you would go to the booking tab. So basically in the top blue banner that you see there on the left-hand side under the word booking, if you hover there, a drop-down menu comes up and you are going to look for group program. Click there and it will take you to this groups toolkit page. So our groups program, as I mentioned previously, we have 4 documents there easily for you to be up to date and download. Those are the same 4 that I gave to you today as handouts. However, if we make any updates to those policies, we will update them there and you will have them. Now, further down, which I'm not going to really go into today, we do also have a link to our FIT TC program, which allows you to earn TC credits when you sell all bookings through FIT. If you're not familiar with that, yes, we pay TC credits on FIT business, but for the moment, I'm just going to set that aside. And if time permits during our Q&A session, I can go into more detail about that. But since today is all about groups, we're going to just set that aside. Now, another resource, of course, is the actual MSC book, the booking tool portion, the groups quotator portion, which we are going to be going into full detail on how to do that on our June 14th webinar. So be sure to register and join us for that. This would be under that same MSC book, the booking dropdown, and you would go to quotator. And then that would bring you to this page where you actually go in to request your groups and you can pull up and view your contracts. We then have, of course, MSC Book to manage our groups. So again, under MSC Book, when you log in, you would go to that booking tab and you look for group booking. Here, you can view your groups. You can actually book staterooms within your groups, assigning staterooms, making payments, and as I mentioned before, adding ancillary items like excursions, specialty dining, spa, transfers, you name it, cabin shipboard credits, cabin deliveries, all of those ancillary items that you can make more money with. Again, join us on June 23rd for that webinar where we're going to go into great detail on how easy it is to manage your groups through MSC Book. Make sure you get those registrations done for the upcoming webinars. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.